Good morning. My name is Anthony Chung. Now first, let's imagine our own classroom, but with one striking difference. Technology in the classroom has vanished. So that actually doesn't sound too bad, right? No more having to deal with the internet struggles, no more having to charge your laptop every single night, and having to deal with remembering to do that. And all you have to do is go back to good old pencil and paper. However, let's take it one step further, and let's imagine that the paint is chipping off the walls, that the AC and the heater in the school is broken, and that now the school is severely understaffed. So there are 40 students in every single classroom. Well, this imagination isn't just a picture in your mind for many students who live underneath the poverty line. In fact, 46 million people in America live in this adverse economic conditions, and 1 in 5 students face the same setback. In areas where there's a deep amount of poverty, there are many educational effects to this setback. In Chicago, 4th grade students who took a reading assessment, only 27% of them were considered proficient or advanced. And in Chicago, over 1.5 million people face this economic setback. So this 27% is almost like 1 in 4 students passing this assessment. And if we compare this to the FSA today and our own statewide assessment, that means 1 in every 4 students in this classroom would have passed that 10th grade test, and 75% of the students in 10th grade would have had a retake at the following year. In Detroit, where there were 40% of people who live underneath the poverty line, the scores were much worse, and only 5% of the students were considered proficient, and this pound sign right here represents the amount of students who scored in the advanced region in 2015. The pound sign means that the scores rounded to 0, so that means less than 0.5% of the students who took the test were able to score in the advanced region. This shows the absolute detrimental value of poverty towards students' education. In fact, it also completely destroys their educational learning environment. Do you remember the scenario I said in the beginning where there was no AC, there was no heating, and that the paint was chipping off the walls? Well, this is the actual reality for many students at James Ward Elementary School in Southside Chicago. These students in 1991 faced these same issues, in which the teacher stated that the students came into the classroom wearing full winter coats and full complete outfits because it was so cold in the classroom. How are you supposed to expect to write down your math homework while your fingers are freezing off your hand? This was not an environment that students could learn in. In fact, in 1991, only 18% of students in their statewide assessment were able to score above the 50th percentile. However, 4 years later, in 1995, the school finally received the renovations they so desperately needed, and the infrastructure was finally fixed, and students were able to come into the classroom without freezing and wearing their winter coats. The improvements in their educational achievement scores were seen immediately, and it jumped from 18% to 53% the following year, 35% increase, just because their infrastructure was fixed. So their learning environment makes a complete difference. Just imagine in our school if the paint was chipping off the walls and there were bugs crawling around everywhere. We couldn't learn. And these students were faced to take the same test that we were taking as well. There's also a huge monetary issue inside these districts because even though they affect the students' home economic system, it also affects the district and the public schools' economic standing as well. In fact, Beth Hawkins, the journalist for the Atlantic Monthly, stated that Detroit public schools were so far in the red zone that they may not be able to pay their teachers through the end of the school year. If they couldn't pay the teachers to teach, how are they expected to fix the paint-chipped walls? And how are they expected to pay for these supplemental learning resources that we have today and that these students would not have? However, those are obstacles. It's not a wall. There are schools that have been proven to go around the obstacle of poverty and achieve the academic success that we have as well. One such solution is that a bill in the House of Representatives has been passed in order to give $500 million to Detroit in order to lift themselves out of poverty and out of the hole that they have found themselves in. This takes away their focus on fixing the infrastructure back towards the students and their education. Another solution without the use of monetary system is Goodale Elementary School in Detroit. This elementary school was faced with the same economic issue that James Ward did, and they had the same test scores that they had as well. However, they did not receive the renovations, and they did not receive the funds that James Ward Elementary School did. However, their scores still increased. The principal and many of its teachers attribute this to the different learning styles that they've implemented. One such style is that during one class, a writing prompt. Everyone has to do a writing prompt. And suddenly a robber came in and stole something from the desk when they were turned around and ran back out. The teacher had no idea what happened. So instead of putting the prompt on the screen, he asked the students to describe the situation that had occurred. This engaged the students and allowed them to learn without them even knowing. So overall, poverty has had an adverse effect on students' education, and that is seen throughout their test scores and their learning environments. However, there are ways around it, but the only way we can change this is that we stand up and we do something about it. Thank you.
All right, I have two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
What information did you need before you began your research, and how would that information have shaped your presentation?
So in my essay and my presentation, I talked about both Chicago and Detroit, two areas that I knew from personal experience that they had these adverse poverty conditions. So that information I needed in order to start basing my belief on that poverty had this adverse effect.
All right, and what additional questions emerged from your research, and why do you feel that those questions were important?
So as I used in my presentation, I talked about the different elementary schools that face these conditions, such as Good Elementary School and James Ward. So after researching those, I sort of started trying to understand what students' actually home life, what their home life was like, and how that affected their educational standpoint. So in future, I want to learn about that.
All right, cool. Thank you.